Backstage. This is your all-access pass to everything you need to know to design, produce, and inspire your next event. I'm your host, Troy Peters, SEAS Productions' very own Chief Experience Officer, here to guide you through the world of live event production. Remember to subscribe to the podcast at seaspro.com/backstage or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Today, joining me on the podcast is Jerry Beers, executive and leadership coach, workshop facilitator, and my personal favorite, improv facilitator for business teams, executives, and last but not least, CEO and founder of the Olivine Project. Jerry, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day out. We got to work together not too long ago when we were doing a PCMA event, where you came out and spoke to our chapter and helped them understand what it was like to really, kind of get out of your comfort shell, your comfort zone, and get up on the stage and be able to, you talk about left brain, right brain. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the sort of just high level of what you do, how you kind of got into this, mm-hmm. And then we'll do a little more deep dive. But yeah,
sure.
Give us an intro.
Sure. So, I was trained as an economist at UCSB and went and worked for the Federal Reserve Board in Washington, D.C. It was a really interesting place to kind of get your feet wet. I got a front row seat to see the world's best and brightest PhD economists from MIT, Berkeley, Stanford, you name it, all kind of try to tear each other's work apart. Right. And so it was a very academic culture. And so they would get up and kind of propose something and then defend it. And there wasn't a lot of conversation around it. There was a lot of kind of talking down to the group, right? And so I found that they tried to overwhelm each other with information. They tried to kind of be an imposing figure up there. And the way they really gauged whether their talk went well or not was whether there were any questions. And so I started my career that way, trying to come at things from a very kind of draconian sense, like just selling my work through from a quantitative perspective. Mm-hmm. And then I went into a creative field. I went into advertising for Saatchi & Saatchi, which is Toyota's advertising agency in LA. And, I tried to do the same approach that the Fed had taught me, which is but I was doing it in front of creatives and media people. So I was trying to overwhelm them with data and just show them how smart I was. And I thought it went well, for a while because I wasn't getting a lot of questions from them. Right. But I later found out that that's not really the goal. You want to invite people in. You want them to kind of take part in conversations. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of unlocked a sense in me that something needed to change, right? And, I didn't know what to do, though. And unbeknownst to me, I was interested in comedy at the same time.
Okay.
I wanted to be a stand-up comic, but it scared me to death. Sure. Yeah. And so I did the next best thing in my mind, which was kind of the gateway drug to stand-up comedy, improv comedy.
Okay.
Because there was a class that made me go every week and I paid for it. And what I quickly found was that improv helped me take the ego out of my work and out of myself and made me connect with the team. Mm-hmm. And I brought that back to work and I found that it really changed everything for me. And creatives were reacting to me differently. They were actually listening to my advice and trying to get into the numbers, asking me questions. And, I think best of all, what I really think about was back to your left brain, right brain stuff. What I realized is coming from the Fed, I was stuck in the left brain. I was in a fear-oriented kind of approach. I was trying to prove myself. I was throwing numbers and statistical terms out to kind of wow people, right. But I wasn't connecting. And so what improv taught me to do was really focus on connecting with the people, throw all the numbers away. Even if I have a presentation that has nothing to do with numbers, let's, connect. And really that began my real career today, which is connecting with people, communicating ideas, helping them figure out what they want to be doing and, kind of helping them engage that right side of their brain.
That's awesome. We often, or definitely I often, am in a situation where a client will want the latest and greatest. They want the technology. They want the exciting because they want to wow and they want to speak down to the audience. They want to be like, we're the biggest, we're the best and everything. but I'm always taking them back to where's the story, right? Like it's great to have this latest and greatest. We just had a speaker here, Sylvie DeGusto, who does a hologram. She actually speaks within a hologram. It's an amazing experience if you get to see it. Which at first you're like, okay, well that's neat, but the fact that she knows how to take that and really communicate a story and and help the people walk out of that, like when people are leaving that space, and she'll have 1,000 people in an audience, you'll hear everybody talking about her message, none of them talking about the technology. Right. It was mind blowing to watch it in the room, but they're leaving with that nugget, and that is always the struggle about like too much information or too much whiz bang versus sustenance, right?
Absolutely. I love the quote that I'll butcher for you from Maya Angelou that's like, no one remembers what you said, but everyone will remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
And so in situations like that, that's kind of how I view technology, data, anything that is kind of like in an idea world. That's great. That's kind of what you're selling. But when you're in front of people, when you're talking to people, they're really looking at you to see who you are you communicating authentically with them.
Right.
And then you have them hooked. It's almost like the red light, green light game you play as kids.
Right.
If you don't have someone engaged with you, you don't have their permission to give them information. Right. But if they are engaged with you, they're interested in you as a person, you got a green light and you can actually share your ideas and kind of communicate with them in a much different sense.
Yeah. I love that. That reminds me of a book that I'm reading right now called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. I think I'm probably mentioning his name incorrectly, but he had a Michelin star restaurant. He's one of the creators, I think, of the Bear TV series, if you've watched that series. And he talks about, all these amazing dishes that they made that nobody remembers the food. They remember the experience of going to this restaurant.
That's right.
And that's what it's all about. It's not the people, it's not it is the people to some extent, but it's never the technology. It's what you're left with, right? Like it's to go see a blockbuster movie. It's like that movie was amazing, but you're left with this feeling, and that's the feeling you want, right? So
that's right. Yeah. Exactly. That's that show. Actually, I watched that show and it struck me how they had a left side of the house and a right side of the house. I don't remember which was which, but it was like
that is absolutely brilliant. And I think that we speak to this industry that we're in, where it's hospitality and things like that. And so I think you're absolutely right. We work with engineers that are backstage that I will never let talk to a client, but everybody in front of house or on stage or working the stage, they get it. They know how to have that left brain, right brain conversation. So what are some pointers that you could give to maybe somebody that's maybe struggles with that maybe is a little bit too one-sided or the other? How do you get a balance? How did you get a balance and realize, like you were saying, you were working in an industry that was really about numbers and facts and figures, but you found that soft skill and you were able to communicate and bridge that gap and allow an audience to connect?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Improv did it for me, and I think what I had told myself before for so long is that I am an expert. I am so smart in whatever topic I'm in, and I want to prove that here. And now almost my thought going into things is it's okay if I'm an idiot. Right? It's fine. I'll be the first to admit that, and I know I'm not, but like I'm an expert in all this stuff. But I can also then relate to people. My bar is low, and I'm just trying to explain it in a way that anyone can understand it. But I do think that improv is really uniquely suited to pop people open to that right side of their brain, because I feel we're all afraid to some extent of looking stupid.
Right.
I think everybody goes into meetings, goes into presentations, goes into first dates or whatever, and really their first goal might be to just not look stupid, and I think the danger of that is that you can't really be at your best then.
Right.
You're preparing mentally. What I find when we're doing improv, we have definitely some exercises that highlight how much you're trying to control the situation, how much you're pre-planning. One of the things that we played together was where the group passes around the ABCs, just around the group, and they think it's the dumbest thing ever until someone screws it up, which they always do. If I have a group of 10 people up there and I'm asking them to do the ABCs, they go one by one, A, B, C, D, K, and everyone laughs at them.
Yeah.
And there's two problems with that. So one, I sit back and I ask, like, what were you thinking about when it wasn't your turn, when you were waiting for the alphabet to get to you? And they were like, I was counting ahead to see what my letter was.
Trying to figure out when, I remember that.
Which is absolutely insane if you think about, we're all experts in the alphabet.
Yeah.
We could get dropped out of a plane and hear A, B, C, and then put them a point at you. You'd be like, D?
Yeah.
And so, but we still try to plan ahead. And then all of these groups will say, I was just trying to not look stupid, And then you kind of ask them, so isn't that kind of crazy? Doesn't that remind you of something when you're in a meeting and someone else is talking? What are you talking about? Or what are you thinking about, I should say?
Right. You're trying to think about, like, what's the next smart thing you can say to that response, right? How can you respond and still continue that conversation, but be the smarter guy in the room or whatever it is, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so improv is about breaking that down. And it's impossible, I think, for most people, they don't come to a class or to many things in their life that way. I think they are approaching it, in a way that's free and authentic. I think they come to it instead in a way that's kind of guarded a little bit and
pre-planned.
Yeah, pre-planned. Even if it's colleagues they've been with forever, there's baggage there. There's things like that. So what I like to see is, we were just talking about it too, in a group of 15 people, if we're doing a 2-hour session, there might be a couple people who kind of pop open and get it right at the very beginning, and there will be a couple people who pop open along the way, and then the rest of them kind of have their own sense of when they're going to pop open. But I will see people kind of get it, and it just kind of keys in for them. And then that group is sort of united, and they feel like, I always tell the groups that hire me, do an improv thing and then take them out for drinks right afterwards. That will be the best happy hour you ever have.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, that's phenomenal. I love everything you're saying. And for myself, because I do a fair chunk of public speaking, which used to terrify me.
Yeah.
Up until about 15 years ago, when people just kept asking. They're like, "You're an expert in your field," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." Absolutely, have the fear of, like, you don't believe who you are, right? Even though everybody else around you is. And so when I had to first give my first talk to a large group, I asked my father, who was a professor and instructor, and I said, "How do you do that? You're an engineer, and how do you get comfortable in front of a class?" And he said, "You got to tell a joke to start things off." Ooh. And once I did that, I got it. And it was like, so still to this day, every talk I get, best part of my talk is that opening joke.
Yeah, for
sure.
But
then everybody gets into this. It allows them to give this little, they almost relax, right? Because they've laughed. There's this muscular thing that happens. There's a breath thing that happens that is all very important in order to let people go, okay, I'm in. I'm into what this guy's about to say.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about when you're working with a CEO or an executive that maybe is so stuck in those figures and numbers and things. How do you get them to break that down? How do you break that down for them to be like more engaging?
Sure. And I think, so what you're saying is increasing the connection, in my language. You're up there, you tell a joke, and you become more human. And so that's what I would go for with them, is how can we bring more humanity to this moment, rather than kind of the being worried about credibility, all of that other stuff. And I think, to your point, people were telling you you're an expert in public speaking, and you were like, "Who, me? What are you talking about?" Right. But that's how many of us feel. We're like, I'm one sentence away from being discovered as an imposter.
It's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
I absolutely.
And that scares people so much when they are going to do public speaking, that this is the moment in front of all these people that I'm going to be discovered. Yep. And so what's brilliant is, with your joke, you disarm them by showing them, they think of it as like, oh, he's connecting with us. He's not nervous up here. He's being himself, and I think they can audiences can smell that, and they can kind of sense it. And so with CEOs, I mean, there are definitely games that you can play to kind of loosen people up, but there's also exercises you can do just on your own to kind of like break your mind into, one side or the other. And so, I mean, there's like group improv games that I might not get into as much because it takes a little more effort. Sure. But even if it's just as simple as grabbing something nearby, like grabbing the pen on your table and just taking, just enough uncomfortable amount of time to write all the things you could do with that pen besides writing. what could you use that pen for that's not writing, and just list them all until your mind goes blank, and then you have to keep listing them. You're going to come up with some stupid stuff for that pen.
Yeah.
But when you're done with it, you will just kind of shake your head and be like, oh, what was it? Oh, okay. I feel a little bit kind of more broken into the right side.
Right.
And at the beginning, you'd be like, it's for writing.
Yeah.
This pen is for writing.
It's so funny because when you said that, I quickly had a moment of panic of like,
Yeah.
is he
going to
really
ask
gonna
me?
ask me this?
Yeah.
What else would I use a pen for?
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
right away I was open. My brain started going, it's a toy rocket ship. You
Yeah.
can make a bridge. You can do like,
it's a fake mustache. It could be anything,
yes, yeah.
You just go into all these things and you realize when we were kids, toy rocket ship, that would be like the third thing that a kid
Right.
would use that for.
Yeah.
But for us, we just sit there and look at it because
what do you mean?
there's so
You
much.
write with it.
Yeah.
I could write on paper. I could write on, yeah.
We have layers of things we need to get through, stress, just everything to kind of break through identity, all that stuff to get through in order to get back to that sense of play
Yeah.
and connection. So I think my goal with CEOs and people like that is to kind of have them learn the left side brain stuff enough so that they have the script, they know what they're going to say, the bullet points, whatever kind of talk this is, but then get up there and connect. And when I did stand-up comedy, I had this weird thing that just kind of happened to me one day where I was standing behind the stage, and I remember I was at I'll name drop for you, the Comedy Store in LA, and I was like behind the curtain, and I could see all the people a little bit, just through the little crack. And I remember at that point I was rehearsing all my stuff. I was like, okay, I'm gonna hit this, I'm gonna hit that, and this, I'm gonna say this, and then I just was like, wait, I'm gonna go out there and feel like a robot if I do this, because I'm like going over lines right now. And so I just took a deep breath, and I thought about a time in my life that I was uniquely, authentically myself in terms of, for me, it was a trip that I took with some friends, and we were all sitting around a fire making animal noises and jokes and just being idiots, right? And so I thought about that, and I thought, that's how I want this room to feel. It's not like I was being funny alone in that moment. I was just like, I was being funny, they were all being funny, but we all felt together, right? And so then it was a brilliant moment for me as a stand-up and just as a person, because I realized that's the key, is feeling like you can create your support out there.
Yeah.
Because the audience really wants you to succeed, and they want to connect with you.
Yep.
And if you're open to that, if you start with a joke, if you, come to it with the energy of inclusion rather than defense, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm. I think even, you just saying that as we started this podcast, I guess about a year and a half ago now, almost 2 years, that was a fear going into it. It was like, how are people going to perceive this? And I was self-doubting myself, and I'm trying to get comfortable in this. It wasn't until I saw those first comments and the number of people that were watching our podcast and then reaching out, even running into me in person at a trade show. And they were like, that podcast is amazing.
Oh, that's
what
awesome.
you talked about with this was like, oh my God, okay, this is a real thing. And it's, before we started the podcast, I asked a little bit about where the Olivine title comes from.
Yeah.
And as you were sharing that, you talked about, you talked about the Olivine pools in Hawaii, where the waves are crashing next door, but there's this sense of calm and sense of peace in there. And that is what that feeling is of when you're trying to be that speaker, or even when we're trying to, build an event or pitch a product or a project to a client, of the fear and the crashing. And then when you get into that zone of like, here's what we've created.
Right.
It is that peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
And the self-doubt goes away. And yeah.
That's right.
It's that together perfectly.
It's that calm center that you can go back to. And, all too often we spend too much time around those rough edges where waves are crashing into us, and we never get into that calm center. But that's, to me, the goal, to get people there, And I think that it takes effort to stay there. So it's not like you do this one time and you're fine. But it's like, no, you have to kind of center yourself. You have to get back. You have to figure out what your purpose is, and, how your authentic self kind of plays with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because those waves are loud, and they're going to be there, right?
That's right.
That's all going to be there. But if you can find that spot, it's so great.
And I feel like it's a good thing to say is that there's a lot of fight or flight that comes with public speaking. And those waves feel, to many people, like they're going to die, and I've talked to lots of people with stage fright and things like that. And that's a hard thing to overcome for anyone, because it literally feels to a lot of people, like Jerry Seinfeld says, that he said that public speaking is people's number one fear, and death is number two.
Yeah.
And like people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. I like that's the best line ever. But it's that, it's like basically people are thinking that they're going into this fight or flight space, and they feel like they are going to have to fight their way through this, or they're just going to get really big and read the script.
Right.
And I think both of those are hard things to experience up on stage. And then the real thing is to realize connection is the answer, and that's the way to get through it.
Perfect segue. Read the script. We get so many, bringing this back to production, which is kind of like our world. We get so many there's so many times where I've seen an event where I've been in the audience and people are just reading off their PowerPoint slides, right? So what do you use when you're, improv is being in the moment. Standing there and speaking off of a PowerPoint slide is not in the moment. It's very preachy and that. So what are your talks like? How do you do your training when you are trying to keep people in, almost making the whole room the stage? Where's your fine line? Where's your balance of using a slide deck versus not? And what do you recommend for leaders that are working, trying to figure out that balance, right? Sometimes we got to present numbers, but we also still need to make that personal connection.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great question. I think your inclination to tell a joke first is the same as mine. I can't get comfortable until I feel like I've done something, heard a glass break and mentioned it on stage. Something, just something in the room. And I feel very strongly that you can have a script, you can have, something written out, but you can't read it.
Right.
So you have to throw that thing away at some point. You
Use
can
bullet points.
So you have to figure out, like, it depends on how important the talk is, of nailing every single piece of it, right? So if you're giving, a keynote address, you want to make sure that you know how you're going to say things, but you want to make sure that you're not just reading the script. You want to make sure that you're operating off of, I know these bullet points exist. And if I hear you do a speech 3 times, it's okay if little things change here and there. That's kind of part of the fun of live speaking. We could have just read your thing, could have had an AI bot read it. But I think I usually get people to a spot where, if you feel comfortable writing it out, that's fine. Read it, try to memorize it, practice it a bunch of times till the point where you can throw it away, and then we just talk, right? And you feel very connected and go off of that. You know what the script said, but you also know where you are in the room. And gold comes out if you're really connected. That it'd be better than the way you wrote it in the script. The other thing is just bullet points. What you're trying to do there while you rehearse is basically get to a point where you know each part. So you know what you're going to say in each part, but again, you're connected. And so in essence, by no means am I saying you go up there as the best man in a wedding and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of anything and I had 3 drinks and here we go. Right. But instead, you should be an expert in your field. You should have something you want to say that's carefully planned out, and then get up there as yourself, don't have 3 drinks before you do it either, but
Yeah, I'm a big, I love, because I do use my slide deck as sort of just a reminder of what I need to talk about. But I use big images, like a big photograph. It's like, okay, we're talking about a mountain, or the pictures of a mountain, or we're talking about scaling the whatever you're trying to scale to overcome, right? So that's just, it's an image to just trigger the brain and kind of help you move along.
Well, I think, and that is a good reminder too, because I work with people who have highly technical backgrounds in data and analytics. And one of the things that I used to tell my analysts is I used to challenge them to not have numbers in the deck. And they used to look at me like I was crazy, because for them, their work is numbers. And they think if they didn't communicate that they didn't get credit for having done the work. I've literally heard them say that. And so I would flip it on the head for them and say, no, you don't get credit for this if people don't know what you're talking about. So if you start with all of the detail and numbers, you leave it to the audience to figure out what the point of this is, they're never going to do it. You know, if I tell you a bunch of weather terms and say it's 72 degrees and the barometric pressure is this and that,
Right.
their heads are going to explode. But if you just say wear shorts,
Yeah.
then
It's going to be a good day.
that's the insight, you know. Say that. Don't. And if they ask you why do you wear shorts, then you can get into that stuff.
Right. Okay.
But I think I'm all for PowerPoints if they're needed, but each slide should be able to be kind of like gotten in 2 seconds or less. Like I know what we're talking about, so that you can be the kind of focus of the talk rather than the slide deck.
I love that. I started out in motion picture production, and I still remember in film school, my audio, my sound teacher would always talk about you need to capture the entire movie as if there's no movie. So the sound has got if
Right.
you were just listening to the actors talk, you can picture what's going on.
Yeah.
Or the sound effects, you know, birds in the background, what all those Foley effects and things, you know what's going on, right? It's like, it would remind me back of those old radio plays, right? Where you hear the door closing. You know, it's not a real door. It's just a guy on the radio with a sound effect thing. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up with 2 stories. Share something that was maybe challenging, whether it was working with a client or a speaker, you know, a leadership person that maybe didn't get it until they did get it or something. How do you deal with, or when an audience doesn't want to get up on stage and get involved? So share that, like, okay, but you overcame. Share that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that happens to me if I'm on stage at an event and people don't know it's going to be improv.
Yeah.
And we're standing
It's a
there.
lot
I'm
of
standing there.
fear.
I'm looking at like 300 people, and I'm like, all right, because I'm hoping that someone shared with them that it was an improv event, and I'm like, I need 10 people on stage, and I mean, no, they're not coming on stage. And the thing for me is that I know what it feels like to not want to be on stage, to not want to go up there, and so I get it, but I find that people usually cave to the social pressure of me just standing there by myself, and they finally come up and do it. So I think it doesn't usually happen unless the crowd doesn't know about the improv thing, because I usually try to just make sure that a few of them are kind of primed for like, okay, you might have a chance to get up on stage.
Yep.
But the first time that happened, I was like, is this gonna go okay? And then we were fine.
Yeah.
Another one, let's see, I think.
And then a success story. Like what's another one where it really, like, this is what happened and it was perfect.
Yeah. So I think one is that improv, I find, can be like an intimidating thing, especially for like creative leaders, because they feel like they should be better at this than everyone else.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I've had various experiences over the years with creatives that come into the room, and they're seeing that the sales guy or the account guy or whatever is actually quite funny and is doing well, and they're like, this is stupid, and they kind of like back up and back off. And so I need to, in that moment, support them a little bit to make sure that they feel like, there's no expectation here, it's fine. And they usually come back to life and get into it. And then another one is when I'm dealing with leadership groups. Many of those people there's a lot of baggage that comes with being on a leadership board and being very serious and not wanting to look stupid. And so, I'm thinking of one time in particular dealing with an advertising client, and, you have account, you have media, you have finance guy, you have a creative, you have production, kind of all in the same room.
Yep.
And, you kind of know going in, you're going to get varying degrees of things, but just watching the baggage, that they brought to the table kind of melt away. I was really nervous at first because they seemed very serious, and this was a group that was not doing well with each other. And, by the end, they were dying laughing, and each of them had sort of unlocked in their own different way.
That's
and
awesome.
They're all super smart people, and you could see it by the end that they kind of appreciated the nuances about each of them and how they thought differently a little bit more. So,
Jerry, I think we need more of you in the world. Like more, I think we need some of these political summits where it's like, all right, Jerry's going to bring you all together first, and then you guys figure this out. But thank you so much for being on the podcast. That was those nuggets of information. Hopefully people have been able to like, yeah, okay, I get it now. I know even just for me listening to you talk, and we've met several times, and I've, obviously been in one of your sessions where you came and spoke to our chapter. But yeah, I really appreciate you opening up that box a little bit and allowing us to see that. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website at www.olivineproject.com, or they could, I guess, send me an email. Do I give my email? Okay, or they could send me an email.
Okay.
Sorry. Or they could send me an email, jeromebeers@gmail.com.
Perfect. Right on. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. This has again been SEAS Backstage, where you can get your all access pass to everything you need to know to design, produce, and inspire your next event. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast, or go to seaspro.com/backstage. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Jerry.
for having me. That was awesome.